In a world where illusions are carefully manufactured and truth is buried beneath velvet curtains and golden trophies, the day that Courtroom erupted will forever be remembered as the night Hollywood's darkest shadow stepped into the light. Because as the cameras flashed and the eyes of millions from every corner of the globe glued themselves to their glowing screens, the silence was suffocating, an unbearable pause before history cracked open. And when Bill Cosby, a man whose name once symbolized family laughter before it was blackened by scandal, rose to his trembling feet, his voice carried the weight of both confession and accusation, a thunder rolling through marble halls as he declared with a trembling steadiness that Malcolm Jamal Warner's death, the Malcolm who had been joy incarnate, the Malcolm whose smile lit childhoods, whose laughter stitched broken days back together, whose presence on screens had been both a comfort and a beacon, was no tragic accident, but a calculated erasure, a cold-blooded plan orchestrated not by fate, but by design, and the name he spoke as the mastermind sent gasps clawing at the walls of the courthouse. R. Kelly. And in that instant, the courtroom exploded into a storm of screams and sobs and reporters scrambling over one another like animals clawing for survival, because the very idea that one fallen icon had murdered another shattered every defense the human heart had against betrayal. And then, as if lightning itself cracked across the chamber, came the bombshell no one could unsee. The flickering screen alive with hidden videotape, grainy but undeniable, showing Malcolm in a heated confrontation with R. Kelly, and then the venomous words seared into history. "The only way is to end you." Words that froze blood, words that mothers in the gallery could not bear to hear, collapsing into tears while Malcolm's own mother screamed and fell to the cold courtroom floor, her grief a weapon that sliced through every soul, her voice rising with primal agony. "Why, my son? Why did you take him from me?" And before the weight of her lament could even settle, police surged like steel shadows, slamming handcuffs on Kelly's wrists as he thrashed and screamed, "It's all a setup. This is a trap." But the walls would not forgive him. The eyes of millions watching through television screens had already judged, yet Cosby's revelations weren't finished, because with every word his voice gained momentum, shaking with fury as he told the world this wasn't about one man's death, but about a network. A hidden Hollywood mafia that had existed for decades, an invisible machine grinding through the souls of young stars, elevating and erasing at will, and Kelly was merely one cog in its monstrous gears, and in that moment, hashtags erupted like wildfire across social media. Justice for Malcolm, just arrest Kelly, just your Hollywood mafia, just truth exposed. As millions poured into streets with candles and signs, the courthouse surrounded by chanting crowds who cried out Malcolm's name as though keeping his spirit alive through sheer defiance. Yet inside the chamber, chaos sharpened as the grainy footage replayed, Kelly's sweat pouring like confession, his lips trembling as if the words of guilt were clawing at his throat, while Malcolm's family dissolved into broken fragments, his sister rocking and sobbing, his mother rocking back and forth whispering, "They killed my baby," until her whispers became the collective voice of a generation betrayed, because Malcolm's death had now become not just a tragedy, but a symbol. And when Kelly screamed that Cosby himself was twisting truths, trying to save himself by burying another, the room gasped, wondering if the accuser might also be complicit, and then Cosby's face cracked, tears leaking as he whispered the words that detonated illusions entirely. "I kept silent too long. I was part of it once, but I couldn't kill. And when Malcolm refused to join, they sent Kelly to finish what I could not." And with those words, history shifted. Because now the story was no longer about guilt or innocence, but about the survival of the very idea of Hollywood purity. And riots sparked outside, fires burning through the streets of Los Angeles, fans screaming, "Who's next?" While reporters trembled, reading anonymous leaks of mafia files allegedly hidden by Malcolm himself, documents filled with secret payouts, threatening letters, and a chilling handwritten note reading, "Malcolm must stay quiet or else." And the world collapsed in horror as news anchors choked through live broadcasts, families clutched each other and cried, and the question roared louder than sirens. If Malcolm was erased, who else could be next? Because if the mafia was real, no star was safe, and the courtroom turned battlefield when Cosby lifted a final trembling envelope, announcing it was Malcolm's last letter, his final words, and as the paper unfolded, silence stretched thin as glass before Cosby read, "If you are hearing." And so the unthinkable revelation rippled outward like a nuclear blast that no barricade could contain. Because as that grainy leaked video finished playing and the voice echoed through every device on Earth, a voice beloved, a voice tied to decades of laughter, family moments, and box office triumphs, now dripping with venom as it ordered Malcolm's silencing. The courtroom could no longer pretend to be a hall of justice. It became instead an arena of grief and rage where illusions were slaughtered in real time. Fans collapsing in disbelief as the chilling laugh that ended the recording sliced through them like glass, and whispers rose, frantic and horrified. No, not him. Not him. It can't be. But denial was a fragile shield against the undeniable because the world recognized that voice instantly. A titan of entertainment, a household name, someone so high on the cultural pedestal that no one had ever dared imagine his hands dripping with blood. And yet there it was, undeniable. And as the judge slammed his gavel into splinters trying to restore order, Cosby fell into his seat sobbing, his shoulders shaking under decades of silence and complicity. And R. Kelly thrashed in chains screaming, "See, I told you. They used me. They used me as their weapon." His cries echoing through the marble chamber, like a man both guilty and enslaved. But the courtroom was now a storm beyond control, reporters fainting, fans screaming. Malcolm's mother collapsing again into unconsciousness as her daughter begged paramedics to help, sobbing, "She can't lose him twice, she can't survive this." And outside, the riots transformed into an inferno as protesters surged through barricades, candles raised like torches of revolution, chanting, "Justice for Malcolm, justice for all," while around the globe, the footage spread in an instant across continents and time zones. Children in Africa clutching photographs of Malcolm as vigils sprang up in Lagos and Johannesburg. Teenagers in London flooding Trafalgar Square with banners reading "Hollywood Lies." Thousands in New Delhi holding mass prayer circles. In Brazil, crowds dancing and crying in the streets. Malcolm's face painted on banners alongside the word "truth," because now his death had become more than an American tragedy. It was an international wound, and news anchors in Paris wept as they replayed the tape. Commentators in Tokyo trembled through translations, and the Vatican itself issued a statement calling for prayer and cleansing. While in Hollywood, studio gates were vandalized, red carpets slashed, golden statues defaced with graffiti reading "Blood Money" and "Who's Next," because the world no longer saw glamour, but rot, no longer saw legends but predators cloaked in smiles. And yet the fear grew darker still because whispers spread of a list, a dossier Malcolm had compiled in secret, naming dozens more, and though only fragments leaked, each name carried the power to crumble empires, and as anonymous servers dumped pages online, families huddled in front of screens gasping at familiar names, actors, producers, even politicians, and governments scrambled to contain the fallout, with senators demanding investigations, while intelligence agencies whispered that exposing Hollywood's mafia meant unraveling international ties, blackmail networks, secret parties involving royalty, billionaires, and corporate titans, meaning Malcolm's death was not just about Hollywood, it was about global control. And yet, in the middle of this avalanche, in the ruins of truth and illusion, fans clung to Malcolm's final letter, reading it like scripture, printing it on posters, chanting its lines at rallies, his words now immortal. Don't let them bury the truth. A call to arms that galvanized millions, transforming grief into rebellion, and back inside the courthouse, where walls themselves seemed to tremble under history's weight. Cosby tried once more to steady himself, lifting his eyes to the cameras, his face a battlefield of shame and courage, whispering into the microphone, "You wanted the truth, you wanted names, but hear me now. The ones you worship, the ones you invite into your homes every night, they sit in boardrooms deciding who lives, who dies, who vanishes. And when Malcolm tried to pull the curtain back, they marked him." And his voice cracked, his hands clutching the wooden podium like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. And yes, I was once part of it. Yes, I stayed silent, but no more. And his words ricocheted through the globe, played in subway tunnels, on protest megaphones, in classrooms where teachers wept reading them aloud. And suddenly the trial wasn't about guilt, it was about survival. Survival of faith, survival of innocence, survival of the idea that truth could still matter. And as night fell, the city burned with both fire and candlelight, mothers holding children's hands, fathers explaining that heroes had failed them, young fans crying into posters of Malcolm.